Here are 3 true, scary stories. Story number 1. The Mystery of the Mary Celeste. The ghost ship that sailed itself. In December 1872, the Mary Celeste was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean. The ship was intact, fully stocked, and seaworthy. Yet the crew had vanished without a trace. There were no signs of struggle, no distress signals, and no clear explanation for their disappearance. More than 150 years later, the fate of the crew remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. This is the true story of the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship that still haunts the seas. The Mary Celeste, a ship doomed from the start? The Mary Celeste was a 282-ton brigantine, originally named Amazon when it was built in 1861 in Nova Scotia, Canada. The ship was plagued by bad luck from the start. Its first captain died mysteriously on its maiden voyage. It was involved in multiple accidents, including running aground and colliding with another vessel. After years of changing owners and bad omens, it was renamed the Mary Celeste in 1868. Some sailors believed the ship was cursed, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. The fateful voyage, 1872. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York City, bound for Genoa, Italy. It carried a cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. The crew consisted of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 experienced sailors. The voyage was expected to take about a month. Captain Briggs was a seasoned sailor with an excellent reputation. He was also deeply religious and cautious, the kind of man who would never take unnecessary risks. Yet, less than a month later, the ship was found abandoned. The Discovery, a ship without a crew, December 4th, 1872. On December 4th, 1872, the British ship Dei Grazia was sailing through the Atlantic Ocean, about 400 miles east of the Azores. The crew spotted a ship drifting aimlessly. The sails were partially set, flapping in the wind. The ship looked undamaged, but it wasn't responding to signals. Something was clearly wrong. Captain David Morehouse, commander of the Dei Grazia, recognized the ship. It was the Mary Celeste. Since Morehouse knew Captain Briggs personally, he immediately sent a boarding party to investigate. What they found shocked them. What was left behind? When the crew of the Dei Grazia boarded the Mary Celeste, they found 1. The ship was in perfect condition. There was no significant damage to the ship. It was not sinking, and there were no signs of fire or a struggle. The ship was still seaworthy and could have easily continued its journey. 2. The cargo was untouched. All 1,701 barrels of alcohol were still in the hold, except for 9 barrels that were later found empty. The crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. Nothing was stolen. There was plenty of food and fresh water to last for months. 3. The lifeboat was missing. The only major thing missing was the ship's single lifeboat. It seemed as though the crew had left voluntarily. But why? For the last logbook entry was normal. The ship's logbook was found in the captain's quarters. The last entry was dated November 25th, 1872, 9 days before the ship was found. The log contained nothing unusual, just routine navigation records. 5. A half-eaten breakfast. A meal had been partially eaten, and a cup of tea was still sitting on the table. It was as if the crew had vanished in the middle of their meal. What could have caused the crew to abandon a perfectly good ship? Theories. What really happened to the crew? Over the past 150 years, countless theories have been proposed. 1. Mutiny or piracy. Some believe the crew turned on Captain Briggs or that the ship was attacked by pirates. A problem. There were no signs of violence or stolen valuables. 2. A giant sea monster? Sailors in the 19th century feared massive sea creatures, like giant squids or krakens. Problem: there was no damage to the ship, and a monster wouldn't make the crew take the lifeboat. 3. A waterspout or freak storm. Some believe a waterspout, a tornado over water, or a powerful storm could have panicked the crew. Problem: the ship was still intact, and the weather was calm when it was found. 4. Alcohol explosion theory. The Mary Celeste cargo included 1,701 barrels of alcohol. Some suggest that fumes from leaking barrels caused a small explosion, scaring the crew into abandoning the ship. They may have feared a massive fire and taken the lifeboat, only to be lost at sea. Supporting evidence: 9 barrels were found empty, possibly leaking fumes. The crew may have panicked and never made it back. Problem: no signs of fire or smoke damage were found on the ship. 5. Alien abduction. Some conspiracy theorists believe the crew was abducted by extraterrestrials. Problem: there is no evidence to support this, except for the eerie fact that the crew vanished completely. The fate of the Mary Celeste. After the Mary Celeste was discovered, it was sailed to Gibraltar, where an investigation was launched. However, with no solid evidence, the case was closed without answers. The ship was eventually sold and continued sailing under different owners. In 1885, it ran aground off the coast of Haiti and was deliberately destroyed for insurance fraud. The remains of the Mary Celeste were never recovered. Final thoughts: a mystery that may never be solved. The case of the Mary Celeste is one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time. A perfectly functional ship, a missing crew with no explanation. A story that still haunts historians and sailors alike. Even today, no single theory fully explains what happened. Did the crew abandon ship due to an accident or panic? Or was it something far stranger, something we may never understand? One thing is certain: the fate of the Mary Celeste remains one of the sea's greatest unsolved horrors. Story number 2. The Ghost Yacht. The unsolved mystery of the Caz-2. In April 2007, a yacht named Caz-2 was found drifting off the coast of Australia. The engine was running. A meal was set on the table. Life jackets and emergency equipment were untouched. But the 3 men on board? Gone. Vanished without a trace. What happened to the crew of the Caz-2? This is the terrifying true story of the Caz-2, the modern ghost ship that still haunts the seas. The Caz-2, a dream trip that turned into a nightmare. In April 2007, 3 experienced sailors, Derek Batten, 56, and brothers Peter, 69, and James Tunstead, 63, set sail from Airlie Beach, Queensland, Australia, aboard their yacht, the Caz-2. The plan was to sail up the Australian coast to Western Australia, a trip that should have taken several weeks. All 3 men were experienced sailors, not reckless amateurs. The weather was calm, and the journey began without issues. But just 3 days later, the Caz-2 was found drifting aimlessly, and its crew was nowhere to be found. The discovery: a ship frozen in time. On April 20th, 2007, an Australian Coast Guard helicopter spotted the Caz-2 floating near the Great Barrier Reef, about 88 miles off the coast of Townsville, Queensland. The yacht was drifting with no one on board. The sails were slightly torn, but the engine was still running. The radio and navigation equipment were working. A rescue team boarded the yacht to investigate. What they found was chilling. Inside the Caz-2, the eerie scene. Once aboard, the Coast Guard found the interior of the yacht in perfect order. 1. A meal was left untouched. A half-eaten meal was on the table. Cups of coffee were still sitting out. A laptop was open, untouched. It was as if the crew had just been there, but had suddenly disappeared. 2. Personal belongings were untouched. Life jackets were still in their storage compartments. The first aid kit was unopened. The emergency lifeboat was still attached to the yacht. If the crew had abandoned ship, why didn't they take the lifeboat? 3. The last log entry was normal. The ship's logbook showed no signs of distress. The last entry was written just a few hours before the yacht was found. The log ended abruptly, with no hint of danger. So where did the 3 men go? Theories. What happened to the crew? With no distress calls, no evidence of foul play, and no bodies, investigators began searching for answers. Here are the most popular theories about what happened to the CAS-2 crew. 1. A rogue wave or freak accident. One of the most plausible theories is that a freak wave or accident caused all 3 men to fall overboard. If one of the men fell into the water, the others may have rushed to help, leaving the yacht unattended. The yacht's autopilot could have kept it moving, while the crew struggled to stay afloat. Since none of them were wearing life jackets, they could have quickly drowned. Supporting evidence: the sails were torn, which could suggest strong winds or rough waters. The CAS-2 was not designed for sudden movements. A misstep could have sent them overboard. Flaws in this theory: why didn't at least one person make it back on board? No distress signal was sent, even though the radio was working. 2. A sudden squall or microburst. Some experts believe the CAS-2 may have encountered a sudden microburst, a localized, intense downdraft of wind. Microbursts can strike without warning, overturning boats or sweeping people overboard. A violent gust of wind could have knocked all 3 men into the sea. If they were not wearing safety harnesses, they would have had no way to get back on board. Supporting evidence: the torn sails suggest strong winds. Microbursts have caused similar disappearances in the past. Flaws in this theory: the yacht itself was undamaged, meaning the wind was not strong enough to capsize it. No emergency signal was sent. 3. Foul play or mutiny. Could one of the men have turned on the others? Perhaps an argument broke out, and one of them pushed the others overboard. The last survivor may have accidentally fallen in himself. However, there was no evidence of a struggle, no blood, and no signs of violence. Flaws in this theory: the men were close friends and had no history of violence. The lack of defensive wounds or damage to the yacht makes this unlikely. 4. Pirates. Some have speculated that modern pirates may have hijacked the CAS-2. Pirates sometimes board small vessels, kill the crew, and take valuables. However, the yacht was found intact, with no signs of theft. Flaws in this theory: no valuables were stolen. Pirates usually take the ship or sink it. The CAS-2 was left untouched. 5. Suicide pact. A darker theory is that the men planned their disappearance together. Could they have jumped overboard as part of a pact? Did they fake their deaths to escape their past lives? There is no known reason why they would do this, and their families strongly reject this idea. 6. Supernatural or alien abduction. Some conspiracy theorists believe the crew was taken by something beyond human understanding. Did they encounter something paranormal at sea? Were they abducted by extraterrestrials? The fact that the yacht was perfectly intact, with everything left as if they had just been there, adds to the eerie nature of the mystery. Flaws in this theory: no scientific evidence supports alien abduction. The ocean is dangerous enough without supernatural explanations. The search and the unsolved mystery. The Australian authorities launched a massive search operation, covering thousands of square miles of ocean. But the bodies of Derek Batten, Peter Tunstead, and James Tunstead were never found. With no physical evidence, their disappearance remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries of modern times. Final thoughts: a mystery that haunts the sea. The disappearance of the CAS-2 crew is a real-life ghost story, a modern Mary Celeste. The boat was intact, the engine running, a meal left uneaten. The crew was gone, without a single clue as to their fate. No bodies, no distress call, no answers. We may never know what truly happened to the 3 men aboard the Cas-2. But one thing is certain: the ocean is vast, unforgiving, and full of secrets that will never be revealed. Story number 3. The Ghost Ship of the Arctic. The Unsolved Mystery of the SS Baychimo. For nearly 40 years, the SS Baychimo drifted through the Arctic Ocean without a crew. It was seen multiple times, trapped in ice, floating aimlessly, and sometimes vanishing completely, only to reappear hundreds of miles away. Attempts to salvage it failed, and eventually, the ship disappeared for good. Where did it go? This is the chilling true story of the SS Baychimo, the ghost ship that refused to sink. The birth of the SS Baychimo, 1914. The SS Baychimo was a 1,322-ton cargo steamer, built in Sweden in 1914. It was designed for Arctic travel, capable of breaking through thick ice and freezing temperatures. Originally called Andrommelfen, the ship was purchased by the Hudson's Bay Company in 1921 and renamed SS Baychimo. It was used to transport fur, supplies, and trade goods between Arctic settlements and Europe. For over a decade, the SS Baychimo traveled the icy waters of Canada's north, facing harsh storms and deadly ice flows, but always surviving. Then in 1931, the ship's luck ran out. The abandonment of the Baychimo, 1931. In October 1931, the SS Baychimo was returning from a trading mission, carrying valuable furs from the Arctic. Suddenly, a brutal storm hit, trapping the ship in thick ice near Barrow, Alaska, modern-day Utqiagvik, one of the northernmost towns in the world. The crew of 15 men, led by Captain Sidney Cornwell, waited for the ice to break. But the ice didn't melt. Instead, it grew thicker. Realizing they were trapped for the winter, the crew abandoned the ship and built a camp on the ice nearby. For weeks, they watched as the Baychimo remained frozen in place. Then it vanished. The first of many disappearances. On November 24, 1931, after a violent blizzard, the crew awoke to find the Baychimo was gone. They assumed it had sunk beneath the ice, but a few days later, an Inuit hunter reported seeing the ship drifting in the distance. The crew tracked it down and reboarded it, but by then, the ship was too damaged to continue its journey. Fearing another storm would trap them again, the Hudson's Bay Company ordered the crew to retrieve the cargo and leave the ship behind. The SS Baychimo was abandoned, left to die in the Arctic ice. But the ship refused to sink. The legend of the ghost ship begins. For the next 4 decades, the SS Baychimo was seen dozens of times, drifting thousands of miles across the Arctic. Sometimes it was spotted stuck in ice. Other times, it was seen floating freely, moving with the wind and ocean currents. It vanished and reappeared, as if it had a life of its own. Sailors began calling it the ghost ship of the Arctic. Strange sightings and failed salvage attempts. 1932, the first encounter. Just 1 year after its abandonment, the Baychimo was found 350 miles from where it was last seen. But when a rescue team tried to board it, a blizzard forced them to retreat. When they returned, the ship was gone again. 1933 to 1939. The Baychimo keeps moving. Over the next several years, the ship was spotted repeatedly by sailors, explorers, and Inuit hunters. 1933. It was seen trapped in ice again, but before anyone could claim it, it broke free and disappeared. 1939. It was spotted near the coast of Alaska, floating eerily with no signs of damage or decay. Each time someone tried to board or salvage the ship, the weather turned violent, forcing them to leave. 1945. The ship that wouldn't die. During World War II, Allied forces spotted the Baychimo drifting in the Arctic. They considered using it for scrap metal, But by the time they organized a mission, the ship had vanished again. 1962, a scientific expedition finds it again. A team of scientists and explorers found the Baychimo floating near Point Barrow, Alaska. By now, the ship was showing signs of decay, but was still intact and still moving. They planned to study it further, but before they could, a massive storm forced them to evacuate. When they returned, the Baychimo was gone. The last sighting, 1969, the final vanishing act. The last confirmed sighting of the SS Baychimo was in 1969. It was seen trapped in an ice pack one last time off the coast of Alaska. A salvage crew was sent to retrieve it, but when they arrived, the ship was missing. After nearly 40 years of drifting, the Baychimo vanished for good. Since then, no trace of the ship has ever been found. Where did the Baychimo go? Theories and speculation. Did the Baychimo finally sink after decades of drifting? Or is it still out there, lost in the endless ice? Here are some possible explanations. 1. It sank beneath the ice. Many believe the Baychimo finally succumbed to the elements and sank somewhere in the Arctic Ocean. By the 1960s, the ship was severely weakened by decades of exposure. A storm or shifting ice could have finally pulled it under. However, no wreckage has ever been found, and the Arctic's freezing waters preserve shipwrecks well. 2. It's still drifting, hidden in the ice. Some believe the Baychimo is still out there, trapped in the Arctic ice. The ship disappeared for years at a time, only to resurface. It may be buried under thick ice, waiting for global warming to reveal it once more. 3. It was taken by the sea or something else. Some theories venture into the supernatural. Did the Baychimo sail into a region where physics no longer apply? Was it claimed by the Arctic spirits, never to be seen again? Could it have drifted to an undiscovered part of the ocean? Whatever the case, the ship has never been seen since 1969. The legend lives on. Despite its disappearance, the mystery of the SS Baychimo remains one of the greatest ghost ship stories of all time. In 2006, the Alaskan government launched an official search for the Baychimo's wreck, but found nothing. The ship's exact fate remains unknown, adding to its legend. Even today, some sailors believe it is still out there, lost in the Arctic's endless expanse. Final thoughts. A ship that refused to die. The SS Baychimo should have sunk in 1931. Instead, it defied nature, the elements, and time itself. For nearly 40 years, it drifted through the Arctic, appearing and disappearing like a phantom of the sea. Where is it now? No one knows. But if you ever find yourself in the icy waters of the Arctic, keep an eye on the horizon, because the ghost ship of the Arctic may still be waiting. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories.